The captain of a US destroyer is determined to hunt down a German submarine, but the film also offers the perspective of the U-boat captain and his efforts to evade the ship. This is The Enemy Below, and it kicks off Submarine season on the Collector's Cut. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
We build them good in Germany, eh, Heine?
This is a movie podcast, and we do seasons on this show, meaning that we take a theme or a director, an actor, a franchise, and we do a batch of movie reviews in a row that all kind of complement each other. And today we are starting Submarine season, which was a vote winner actually on Patreon. We had submarines, planes, and trains, I think, were the three options for a season, and submarines came out on top. And today we begin that journey with 1957's The Enemy Below. So, obviously there's some big heavy hitters that everyone would expect us to do during this season. Your Das Boots, your Hunt for Red Octobers, Crimson Tides. We're getting to those. Those are all coming. But I thought it'd be important to start off with some of the more earlier submarine movies for the first couple of episodes, so we have some perspective. We can see how things changed, and also just, earlier period of filmmaking. How did they handle the effects? That kind of thing. So we're going to start with Enemy Below. We will start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to the spoilers. And if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, hit the like button. Helps out a bunch if you do. And you can give us 5 stars in your podcast app. It really does help. And you can support us over on Patreon and get bonus stuff. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So, yeah. Didn't really know much about this movie. I've seen a couple of the films we're doing later in the season, but this one I had not seen. And this one might be kind of unique in that, at least I think, right? Because, again, it's been a while since I've seen some of the other ones, and I certainly haven't seen a ton of them. But I feel like most of these movies we're going to do are going to be primarily set on just a submarine, and that's kind of it.
Right.
This one is... At first, I actually thought it was going to be... like, we never really see the inside of a submarine. It's more like, we're on a ship and the submarine's the enemy that we're like, we're running from, we're scared of.
That happens to be below, right?
Yes, and is below, as you'd expect. But it actually does more of a 50-50 thing where we do actually start jumping between the American ship and the German submarine, and it's set during World War II, and we get kind of like almost an even split down the middle, actually. That said, though, it would have still counted as a submarine movie even if it didn't do that, just because it's all about a submarine. Just it's just from the perspective of the people who are not on the submarine.
Right. Yeah. Still, it you can be a monster movie even if we're following the monster. Like perspective doesn't change what the theme of the movie is. Yes.
So. Yeah, I mean, that's the basic gist of this one. It's an American ship during World War II in the South Atlantic and comes across what looks to be a German submarine, an U-boat, and a game of cat and mouse begins, effectively. And that's it. That's the entire premise. It's pretty straightforward. So, what is your familiarity with submarine movies in general, David?
I'm gonna go ahead and put that at a big old Dick Diddley. I have not seen the classics that you have referenced before. I've got no major thing there. I feel like, I have an idea of the visual style. I have an idea of like the cramped nature of it and the idea of the tension of like this whole thing is just going to implode if it gets hit the wrong way. Like I understand the idea of the movie, but I can't say I've actually seen any of them.
Okay, that's interesting. I feel like I've seen the obvious ones that like are going to be in the middle of the season. There's one or two newer ones at the end of the season which I've not seen either. So I've seen, because I feel like all the ones that people know are from the 80s and 90s, and then there's some newer ones that aren't as well known, and there's some older ones that were probably big enough at the time, but as we've moved on decades and decades and decades, you don't hear people under the age of 60 talking about The Enemy Below. I reckon usually. So
no.
We'll dive in. We'll see how it is and so on. But we'll start with a simple question. David, what did you think of The Enemy Below?
I really liked it. I think that it does a great job of taking the differing perspectives here of the German U-boat and the American destroyer and doing an interesting job with them. I don't know what counts as a spoiler in this, so I'm speaking very broadly until you can open me up on that. But I think that it does a solid job of making me care about the characters, really driving that home. I will say about halfway to 2/3 in, I did feel a little bit of pacing issues. It did feel like it was maybe just spaced out a bit too far. But once the third act hit, once we got into like the really big stuff at the end, it nailed it. I was enraptured the whole time, and I think it absolutely put a perfect point as to the themes and the ideas that it was playing with the rest of the movie. It made them crystal clear at the end, and I don't think it really could have ended any other way. So very well done. And also, this absolutely had military money behind it, and boy does it show.
I mean, there's a thank you at the end
Yes.
to the Navy for helping with this motion picture, which...
I'm just saying, like, compositing wise, yeah, there's a couple shots where, like, they definitely couldn't get away with it otherwise. But most of it, it feels like it's just, nope, we dropped some bombs. We just did that.
Yeah, I mean, when you say bombs, what you're really meaning is depth charges. So you see a lot of like real shots of water just sort of exploding up as the explosives go off underneath, and a lot of that stuff just looked real. It just felt like, oh, you just did this because you know there's a wide shot and there's a ship, and well, yeah, there's obviously some shots here or there that are miniatures or you know one or two composites. For the most part, it feels like they just did stuff, and that's you know fair enough. That definitely makes it feel like it's you know bigger in that sense. I mean, I liked it. I don't know if I'm quite as positive as you. Not because it does anything wrong, per se. Just because, like, I think its main strengths largely is kind of the conflicting captains that we get to follow. But interestingly, I actually think the German side was more compelling to watch. I thought the American side was very, like, vanilla, I guess. Like, there wasn't a whole lot to it. And there's definitely, like, kind of a... like... To give an example here of like maybe a key little critique that makes it feel like it never like shifts into high gear for me is that on the American side, even the third act, when stuff's crazy, stuff's going on and whatever, literally at one point the captain like asks someone to follow an order and the person says, "With pleasure, Captain," and I'm like, we're all scared of dying. Why are you saying "with pleasure, Captain" like you're trying to get good grades on the first day at your new school? There's a little bit of a disconnect there where I wanted them to feel a little bit more distressed about their surroundings and what was happening. So there is a little bit of that kind of like 1950s maybe holding back and just letting the actors be theatrical. Because obviously, we brought up they've got real explosives in the water, we're seeing a real ship a lot of the time, so visually it's very impressive in that sense. But from a cinematography perspective, whenever we're inside the ship or whatever, it tends to be really, really straightforward. Just here's a wide two shot and just perform the scene, and we're not going to do that much otherwise. We'll just let you act, which is, you know, it has its pluses and minuses. It's not necessarily a bad choice inherently, but the whole movie's pretty much like that. It never like changes it up on you, really, for the most part. So... I would say it's good, but I would say it's not great. I think it fails to rise to like, oh, like I was like completely enraptured in what was going on. And I think maybe my expectations were a little bit weird here because like I think this directly inspires a really great episode of Star Trek, the original series.
I saw that in the trivia. I was like, oh, we're going to bring that up. Yeah,
because it's basically a submarine episode where it's, you know, it's there's the Enterprise and the enemy ship, and it's like, oh, we're moving around and we're trying to figure out where each other are, and it's a great episode. And I think this never got as tense as that episode, and part of it, maybe it's just because, it was a decade later, maybe lessons were learned. Maybe it's because perhaps being only about 55 minutes was a better amount of time. Whereas here, I did feel at times where like, oh, we're still just dropping depth charges, and you know, like, there's definitely parts that dragged a little bit, even though it's only 98 minutes long, which is not that long in the grand scheme of things, but it definitely felt like it could have been tightened up here or there. So I don't want to sound too negative because I think it was a pleasant watch. I think a Sunday afternoon, you throw this on, watch an old movie with some old school style acting. It's perfectly pleasant, but I also. It's not one from the 50s that I'm going to be that compelled to go back to either, right? So
no, I put a lot more of my engagement on the mental sort of like back and forth of what's going on there. I will say I didn't know if it counted as spoiler, so I held back on it, but yeah, the Americans have it way too easy in this movie. Like, It's almost every single thing that they do. Yes, there are consequences for some of their actions. It's not like they get off completely scot-free, but it never feels like there's any sort of panic or any sort of worry on their side of things. Even when it comes up to the idea of like, oh, sir, but what happens if they do this? They could sink the boat. It's just like, yeah, well, we'll call somebody, whatever, who cares? It's like, no.
Stakes.
You would die.
I want stakes.
Come on, do something here.
Give me stakes. And the weird thing is because the Germans act more worried, you end up empathizing with them more than the Americans, which is really weird. Now, there's a couple of other little wrinkles that help you empathize, which we'll get into in spoilers, but it is still a weird thing to be feeling that way watching a movie set in World War II, given what World War II was and what both sides were fighting for.
That being said, it is like... I appreciate, and again, it's spoilery, I can't say exactly what it is, but I do appreciate the reaches that they did when it came to the German side of things, because, I mean, this is 1957. Yes, it is still post-war, like, it's not like this is a propaganda piece or anything like that, but I am kind of still impressed that this soon afterwards, and with the American military having such a huge part in making the movie, most likely, that they were able to make the Germans so... relatable. So like, okay, we understand their plight. They are also just cogs in the machine. Whether they believe in the cause is completely separate. They're just doing their duty.
Yeah. It's only 12 years after the end of World War II, so it's impressive in that sense. I would say, I remember on Ace, way back at the start of Ace, we did a movie called The Final Countdown. And one of the critiques with that which was also heavily like, oh, they've got access to like, the ships with the planes and all that, and like they're showing it off. It's practically military porn at a certain point. And I almost do wonder that if the whole idea in this movie that the Americans feel like they've just got things too easy is almost borderline propaganda just for the Navy. Not so much for a war per se or the Americans, but just, hey, look at, like, join the Navy. Look at how confident everyone is and how good we are. Because it almost feels at a certain point that the Germans are on the defensive for more of the movie than the Americans are, and that's weird when you would assume that the Americans are our protagonist.
One character, one of the Americans specifically, like halfway into the movie says, oh yeah, well, they have an easier job than we do. Like, they can just hide and they can surprise us, and like, we're sitting ducks in that case. And it's like, they're freaking out down there, man. You guys are just hanging around. Half of you are asleep right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So I do think there's some things there that really could have like ratcheted up to really make it feel a bit more tense and, get that into it. Having said that, there are positives. There are like character developments, particularly between the captains that are interesting. The rest of the cast, though, by and large, especially in the American side, like they are nothing. Like there's not a single character that you will particularly like. The only guy the Doctor has a couple of scenes where he talks to people, and there's one guy who I'll just refer to as the voice, because his voice was very noticeable every time he spoke.
It's so weird. Like, I thought it was like I genuinely believed I got a crappy dub. Like, I don't know why this movie would be dubbed, but this guy is one of the first speaking characters in the movie, and they're like, "Hey, Corgi, what do you think about this over there?" He's like, "Well, golly gee, guys, I don't know." And it's like, this is a cartoon character.
The funny thing is that first time they're up on deck, so I'm like, oh yeah, this is probably ADR, and that's why it sounds so weird. But when you hear him later on down like below deck, and it's not ADR, like, no, he just has that voice. That's just his weird voice.
It's so weird. I also appreciate the idea of how this movie does progress, because it does open with the idea that both this submarine and the destroyer are like just wasting time. Like, neither of them are pressed to do much of anything at the moment. But then as soon as they come into conflict, it's like, okay, this is the war in miniature. We just got to sort this out.
Yeah, because one of the recurring things at the start of the movie is that the crew on the ship are like almost bored and frustrated, and a lot of them are hoping to see some action because they've not really done anything. And I thought, oh, that's an obvious thing to do, because then you're going to make them regret that later on. They're going to regret their words and deeds and be like, oh God, I wish we never get into a fight. But I don't think they ever do regret it. So I'm like, okay, all right.
Not at all. There's a character at one point who gets injured, and like, it's a really bad injury for that character without spoiling it too much. And he just takes it on the chin. He's just like, Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure things will turn out all right.
Honestly, it's borderline. I got the test results. I definitely have breast cancer. Oh, I'm sure you'll be fine. Yeah, you're right. It's like, obviously it's not as
Tell me
laughably
more
bad
about
as
you and
that.
Johnny.
Like, it's not as laughably bad as that, but it's definitely like almost bordering into that territory of just you're just shrugging this off like it's not a big deal. You should be freaking out right now.
Yep. It's that's the thing. Like on the German side, every time they set up this bit of tension, it always feels like it pays off. But on the American side, every time they set up the tension, it's just met with things work out. We're American after all.
Yeah, it's almost like, hey, we want to show that the Germans are weaker, so they're going to like have fears and like they're going to get tense. And I'm like, no, you're making them seem like real people. You all seem fake.
All you're doing is making me think that the Americans are the bullies picking on the Germans, which I don't think is your intention here.
No, and that's definitely not how it worked in World War II.
Right.
So very strange, very very strange dynamic there on that front, and it does kind of color the movie for me at a touch, where it's hard to just get completely invested in everything. But you know, has some cool things to look at. There's some good characterization on the German side, and yeah, the finale's pretty strong. So you know, it's a good movie.
Just to really drive home, I gotta get the cast pulled up here. We got Robert Mitchum as the American captain, and Kurt Jürgens, credited as Kurt Jürgen, because of course, why not?
I'm willing to bet that that'll be pronounced Jürgens because they tend to do the Y sound for the J.
Jürgen.
But
I never took German in high school. Anyway, those two are the opposite captains. Like they are in charge of their own vessels. And the part that I really appreciated, especially as the movie progressed, is we do turn it into a level of mind games. We turn it into a level of like expectations of how one is going to act and then them trying to change based off of that, and then like keep bouncing that back and forth. But it does run into the same problem where whenever we get into the mind games aspect, it feels like the Americans have the last twist. They're the ones who have the last, we've already figured this out, and therefore we have one up on the Germans.
Yeah. And the dialogue is kind of old school in the sense that it does kind of just quickly explain things in a way where it's almost impossible to actually take it in. So it just kind of sounds like mumbo jumbo at a certain point where you're just kind of like, I'll just trust that you're saying something that makes sense and roll with it.
All I know is we stayed on a heading of 140 the whole damn time. That's all I remember.
So, yeah, and this is directed by Dick Powell, who I don't recognize the name, but when I go to his IMDb, this movie is even in his 4 known for movies.
He was a major actor who then turned into director later on in his career. Oh, so he was in like silent films and early noir stuff.
All right, that's interesting. So, yeah, it seems like most of his known for stuff is acting stuff. However, yeah, so he directed Cry Danger, although it says he's uncredited for that, weirdly. He directed a movie called Split Second in the early 50s. He did a movie called You Can't Run Away From It. He only did like one movie after this one, which is called The Hunters. So, yeah.
Which again seems very military.
Yeah, he died in 1963, so he wasn't alive for a ton of time after he made these movies. So he was probably getting old at that point, I reckon.
Yeah.
So
he had a very long acting career from 1932 to 1954.
That's interesting. So yeah, I'm not super familiar with him as an actor or a director, but like I say, it's directed like a lot of movies from this time period are, where it's like, hey, here's your wide shot, perform the scene. We're not going to do too much in the way of editing. We're not going to do too much in the way of like close-ups or anything like that. But it does have the pizzazz of having some very real practical effects at times. And at a certain point, if you're just setting off bombs in the water, is that an effect or just, no, we're just doing the thing and shooting it? You know?
But like that counts. It's still good.
I mean, yeah, if you could just do it for real, then yeah, obviously it counts. So, as far as anything else goes before spoilers, the music didn't stick out to me. It's pretty typical, just kind of,
military fanfare, sort of. Yeah.
Just that kind of thing. Other than that, I don't think there's a ton to say before spoilers, unless you've got something you want to add.
Not really. I mean, the only other thing, you kind of hit on it before when you were mentioning the other actors, but yeah, there's outside of the captains and maybe their first mates, like the people they talk to the most, even if they aren't technically first mates, none of the other actors are standing up. No one's really delivering a standout.
I
role
definitely noticed the first mate on the German side more though. He felt more like he was close to his captain, and there's at least one other character on the U-boat that I did kind of remember because he's got kind of a running through line.
You get 3 guys in the U-boat, and I would say arguably 4 on the ship.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, we'll do spoilers then if you happen to be worried about spoilers for 1957's The Enemy Below, but we're going to dive into it, no pun intended, right now. So, yes.
Spoilers, the Germans win. It's such a crazy twist. No one saw it coming.
No, of course not. It's... Yeah, so honestly, going through this in order to a point is kind of, I think, going to be difficult just because once they start playing the mind games with each other, it honestly just a big mush of like the same kind of things over and over again. I will say though, they do a couple of interesting things at the start of the movie to build us up, right? And that is that we actually hear a lot of characters talk about the captain, Merle, on the ship before we meet him. And we get these different opinions where he's like, oh, he's new, or we got this guy assigned to us, but he's like a rookie captain effectively. Why isn't one of us getting promoted? Blah, blah. Like they really build up this sense of like expectations of who he is. So when he does come out of the screen a few scenes later, and we get it from like different levels as well. We get like the first conversation is the guy with the weird voice we're talking about, where that's like the lower crew who are like, you know, your common man going like, who's this stupid captain coming in here and telling me what to do? I don't trust him. I bet he's a loser. But then you also have like the doctor and some of the senior officers also have their conversation at the poker game or the card game, whatever it is, where they also kind of have some concerns, but it's much more eloquent. It's much more like, oh, we're concerned because does he have much experience? He was on a public vessel only, months ago or whatever. And it's like, so you get the sense that the entire spectrum of crew from the bottom to the top all have their doubts about this new captain. And then we finally get to see him, which is when the radar first picks up that there's possibly an enemy vessel somewhere nearby. And he comes in tucking in his shirt and he seems very confident. It's like, oh, he seems like he knows what he's doing. Admittedly, I don't know how much this impacts like people following his orders for the rest of the movie. It feels like it almost doesn't actually matter after his introduction, but I did appreciate the build to meeting him by having like the peppered build up to it. That's
the thing is I wish they would have played on that more from the American side of they specifically say this guy was fresh, like weeks off of a sunken ship. Like he was a captain on another ship. It went down and now he's the captain on this ship. And I wanted them to play on that more, especially as the movie progresses. And he does risky things. He does things that, as he does it confidently, he does it well, but they're risky. And I just wanted someone to call him out and be like, hey, we all know where you came from. Is this why your previous ship went down? And he has to like struggle with balancing the trust of his men and having to explain himself too much. But nope, everyone's just like, yes, sir, totally good. Let's do it. Except for one guy who the captain says, slow us down. And he's like, what? Slow down? And then the captain just says, I don't expect to be questioned. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, like even if it wasn't like outright saying things out loud, even if it was just like moments of hesitation where they get an order they don't necessarily understand or agree with immediately, and they're like, "Oh, do I really want to like pull the udder this way or whatever, rudder? I meant rudder, the udder."
There's a lot of cows on board.
Pulling udders left and right. Oh, it's a weird ship. It's a weird ship. But no, like, oh, do I want to like do this? Or do I want to hit this switch or for this thruster or whatever it is? And all of these things. Like, just moments of hesitation, moments where it was, like, uneasy, but that's the kind of what we were getting into earlier, though, is that once things get going, the American ship just does things perfectly, and they all just work together effortlessly. Like, there's the one injury, of course, where they're setting off the depth charges, and the guy gets his hand caught in the rigging for it, and we find out he loses his fingers, and this is what we were getting to earlier. We were saying that he just kind of takes us in his stride, because the captain comes out of the med bay, and he's like, so how's it going, Doc? He's like, oh, I had to amputate his 4 fingers off. And it's like, oh, that's a bummer. And he wakes up, the patient, and he's like, hey, Captain, how am I doing? What's going on? He's like,
did we get the Germans? Did we take them out?
We didn't get the boat yet, but you've lost your 4 fingers, and you're not a soldier anymore. You're not a sailor anymore. You get to go back home.
Purple Heart or something. Get out of here.
You get to go home. So don't worry about anything. You're off duty now. And he's like, okay, you're going to get to go home and do what you did before. And he looks him in the eye and says, I was a watchmaker.
And like, you'd think that would be the point where, like, sad piano.
Yes.
He's questioning his decisions. Does this affect? He's like, oh, well, I'm sure you'll bounce back. And he goes, radio, sir.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's the patient who says, yeah, but I'm sure I'll land on my feet. And he's like, yeah, I bet you will. And then that's it. It's like, there is no friction or resistance to anything on the American ship. It is wild. Like, the most you get is that one loudmouth who keeps questioning the captain, but you only get like maybe one more example of that, and it's never when the captain's around. It's never like a source of like real conflict. It's just one guy voicing this, and then like he's obviously proven wrong because the captain just keeps immediately making all these right decisions, and he's never wrong about anything.
And like, don't get me wrong, I appreciate the idea of the fact that these mind games are being played, that it's two very intelligent, very like tested people who know what they're doing. I don't want a character who is just making wrong decisions, but I do want him to be challenged. And I don't feel like there was a challenge to him in this movie.
No. So the more interesting side, though, is by far the German side, because we don't meet them initially. It's not until after they've been discovered on radar where we do actually start cutting to the German submarine. And we get introduced to Stolberg, who's our captain. And very, very immediately, it kind of starts to set things up where he sees like a sign on the wall that says Fuhrer or something. And
I think it translates to like, give us commands, Fuhrer, and we will obey, or something like that.
But he looks at it and he gives it this glance, and it's like, oh, you're not fond of that being there. And he like throws a towel over the word Fuhrer. So it sets up quite quickly that he's not particularly enthusiastic about what Germany is right now. He's here to do his job, but you know. And there's also this guy that's just transferred to the submarine who still does the salute when he comes in, and he does all the regular Nazi stuff. And he's like, no, on my boat, like, we don't do that, right? We're not doing all that shit, so stop it. And there's a couple times later on where this guy comes in and almost salutes and has to like hold it back. He's like, oh, I really wanted to do the salute, but I didn't do it. But my favorite part...
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
My favorite part is that when they're just waiting in the middle of the movie, because they're basically trying to just sort of kill time at the bottom, like the seabed, because it's not a mind game thing. They're waiting things out. We'll get to all those scenarios later.
Everyone's waiting to see who's going to go first. It's game of chicken.
So, you know, we see one German guy reading the newspaper, right, and it's in German, even though they're all speaking English with German accents, but, you know, old movie, whatever, right? And, you know, you see someone else, the two people are playing like a little board game or something they've brought out, and it goes over to this guy, the one who clearly is very enthusiastic about the cause. And I shit you not, he is reading Mein Kampf. And
of course,
the Captain Stolberg gives this look over at him and then looks at his like first officer and just sort of like says, look at this idiot. He's actually reading Mein Kampf, the pathetic loser. And then the first officer looks around, looks back at him and gives him like a little eye roll and been like, oh, geez, this guy. And the satisfying part to this, though, is that when they're in a spot of trouble going into the third act in a little bit, it's this guy who's the devout Nazi who immediately starts shitting himself and starts begging to surrender. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Chef's kiss.
See, I almost feel like that's how they got away with the rest of the submarine, like the rest of the crew being relatable and being good, is that this guy is the representation of the Nazi and everyone else are Germans. Yeah.
But I mean, I think the captain himself, though, his like, you know, his attitude, he talks about how this new Germany, this new Germany, that he's clearly not very happy about it. He also talks about how he was in World War One and how things were different then. Submarines were like a brand new thing at the time, pretty much. Yeah. And he talks about how the captain on his ship at the time would have to like do some math in his head when he looked through the periscope and like, you know, maybe you'd get a torpedo out the bay, maybe it'd hit, but you know, it was all getting done in your head. Now, and it's funny to hear someone in in the movie set, and it's 1940 something. It's funny to hear someone in the 1940s complain that technology's gotten too far to the point that the human element's been taken out, and I'm like, oh my god, you're not ready for 2026.
I was gonna say, just put that guy in front of a drone and he just shit his pants.
Yeah.
No, I love that bit as well, because it is the first basic conversation that we have in the movie with the U-boat guy, the captain talking to his first mate. So this is where we get his character, and it does a great job of him basically immediately relating, like, war is different now, and I don't like it, and I don't like having to do this, but I do have to do this. Like, he has this sense of duty. He knows this is a purpose, but like, he doesn't like it anymore. And so you get this sort of battle-weathered guy down in the U-boat, and then this captain up top who theoretically has something to prove, despite the fact that he is already perfect in every single way. And to have those two fronts up against each other really puts it as like, okay, who's going to have the stronger will here to survive?
Yeah. So, like I said, the German side just it feels a lot more developed because they do panic, because characters do get scared. And maybe one of the biggest, most memorable scenes of the whole movie is that when they're still waiting on the bottom in this same kind of section, and it's after this guy, the devout Nazis, freaked out, and also another guy freaks out in like the engine room where he picks up a wrench and he wants to just escape, and it's like, where are you going to go? You're on a submarine. What you? But he's just, he's losing his head. He's going crazy, and the captain comes in and talks him down and says, "Hey, give me the wrench," and like just gets him to settle. And it's after this where Stolberg goes into the other room. I don't know if even room's the right word in a submarine, but you know what I mean. He goes into the other section and he's like, "Hey," pulls out a record, a vinyl, and says, "Play this." And his first officer's like, "But that'll help them detect us. Like the sound will carry, right? It's sonar." And he's
this isn't even sonar. That's just a microphone. Don't just hear that.
But he's like, which honestly made me think of Wing Commander when they're in space, and Jürgen Prochnow says, "Shh, there's a destroyer hunting us." God, that movie's so stupid. But that makes sense here because they're actually in water, right? It's fine.
Yeah, water carries sound even better than space.
Everything carries sound better than space. So they play this music, and it's kind of this like, it's a twofold thing. One, it's like, okay, the men are starting to crack down here. I'm going to get us to sing this song, even though we shouldn't do this because they'll know where we are. I'm going to get everyone singing to give everyone a bit of like patriotism and a bit of hope and get everyone's spirits lifted. So so it feels like a noble thing in that sense, but it also kind of feels like almost a mind game thing of like, you're not breaking us down here. We know you can hear this, and you know that we're down here singing, and that's going to play with your minds a little bit. It's honestly not. I mean, obviously we get the ratings rundown. We pick our favorite scene and stuff. This might be a top contender for me. Is this moment?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a fantastic sequence because it is that thing of, you see it in the captain's eyes where as everyone else is singing, they're singing with confusion. They're singing with like, why are we doing this? But at the very least, they're going along with it. They're doing whatever they need to do. But the captain is like glancing upwards. He's like, wherever the boat he thinks it is up on top of the surface, he's singing to the ship. And then when we cut back up to the destroyer captain, he's like, "I think we are making progress in some way here," whatever that may be.
Yeah. Although, worth mentioning, the crew on the submarine do get into it, though. They all start confused, but there's definitely a pivot point where they all start to really feel it, and they're all like getting into it, and like, the arms are all going, and they're singing, and it's a whole thing. So, yeah, it's again, it's a very interesting dynamic versus most war movies, where I don't tend to find myself leaning more towards the German side.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, just the thing that really like started everything off here is when they finally do spot each other, and like the boat comes up to the surface, or the U-boat comes up to the surface. We get to see, I think, a fantastically well done like choreographed scene, which is the captain orders, once the submarine's in plane, of just, hey, show them our broadside, like 100%, just offer us up and have us sitting there like helpless little ducks, and then he times it out of like, here's how long it's going to take to do this, that, the other thing. And he knows that the torpedoes will be ready to fire in like 10 minutes. So as soon as the torpedoes fire off, he fires off the engine, turns the ship just enough to miss the torpedoes. And then the real chase is on as the U-boat has to immediately start packing up and leaving.
Yeah, I mean, the ship just crashes into it. It's like, we're just going to ram the bastard. And there's a lot of like, the whole like luring them into coming up, because they fire some torpedoes. Because the German captain, Stolberg, he does like figure out like a potential weakness. He's like, oh,
well, I was talking about the one at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, the beginning.
First torpedoes fire. Yeah, but no, we also do that later on as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing early on is that it's like, yeah, okay, it feels like the submarine has the advantage, but as soon as they dodge one set of like torpedoes, it's like, okay, right, the American captain knows what he's doing. It becomes a bit more defensive on the German side, and there's some cool stuff here. Actually, it's a little bit later, there's somewhere in the middle, but there's a great shot when they're like trying to get away from them, where they actually just like sail just underneath the American boat, and it's like just this great shot of the submarine, and like they're both going different like directions, just underneath. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's really
and
good
you
stuff.
Pick up that like, oh, the sonar is not going to be able to pick up if we're directly beneath them.
Yeah. So that's a fun moment, and obviously there's a lot of the depth charges stuff, and like they're feeling that they're the rumbles of that, even though they're not getting direct hits. But like I said, the visuals of all the water just kicking up top is like that's why they're doing this from like a meta level. They want to show this all off.
Oh, on the meta level, for sure. I do think there is a point somewhere in the middle, especially after the singing, where the captain's like, okay, we need to break their spirit. That's a big thing that's going on here. So what we're going to do is every hour on the hour until we run out of depth charges or they surrender, we're going to start bombing them just over and over again. And the psychological damage that will be done by this will be immense.
Yeah, and he says this knowing that the chances of us actually getting a hit, especially a killing blow that will like take them out, is like so minute that like that's not the goal here. The goal is just to torment them until morale improves. So, yeah. Well, the thing is though is that so like eventually Stolberg's like, okay, that's the American captain. He's making these choices. He keeps turning this way when we do this, or we fire torpedoes. He does that, and he's like, okay, there's a pattern here, but there is this one time where he turned the same direction twice, and if he does that again, that's an opening. That's a vulnerability where we can just get some clear hits, and that's what happens. He does get a clear hit in with a torpedo, and the American captain's response to that is like, hey, they're going to have to come up soon for air because they can't stay down forever. So here's what we're going to do. Now that we've been hit, let's make it look worse than it is. Get all the mattresses, set them on fire so it looks like we're burning up. Make it look like we're really battle damaged. To make them think that they've won already. And that becomes like and then we'll wait while they're up top, and we'll wait, and then we'll hit them with tons of shit, and that'll be the killing blow.
So, remember I said earlier that it feels like America is just bullies picking on the Germans because like they don't face any challenges. This isn't the exact same, but I will say this for me, and maybe I'm completely wrong, this feels like a war crime. Like what they actually end up doing. It feels like the equivalent of waving the white flag and saying like, oh no, we're all helpless out here in the water. And then as soon as they approach, turn on the guns and start firing. I think that's a war crime.
I was going to say, isn't what the Germans do here also kind of a war crime? But I guess the difference is that when they send the Morse code signal over, the Germans say, we're going to blow up your boat in 5 minutes. They're basically saying, hey, you can evacuate. Like they're giving everyone a chance to get off. So I guess in that sense, that's less of a war crime.
It's like, look, we are taking you out of the war. Like your ship is used for the war effort, but the people on board need not die if they choose to abandon. So by all means, abandon ship. But yeah, they were just like, message received, totally fire whenever you're ready, tee-hee-hee.
Yeah, and because the thing is, though, is that despite them taking out the submarine, which also has like some explosives on board, and it's almost like a comical old school big circular bomb.
I thought I was like, what's the thing? Like, this can't just actually be an Acme branded Looney Tunes ass bomb, but it is.
Yeah, so there's a whole thing here where once they've crashed into the submarine, the captain's looking down and all the rest of it, and they're like the Stolberg like is told everyone to abandon the sub. Some of them have died up top, but his first officer's not here, and he's down there, and he's hurt, so he goes down to rescue him. So again, there's kind of an empathetic thing here where he's like risking his life to save his first officer, even though the self-destruct sequence is basically already initiated. And when he gets up top, or maybe it's right before he goes down to save him, but either way, there's a moment where Captain Murrell comes out and looks down, and they see each other and make eye contact, and there's just a little moment where Stolberg just gives him a salute, and Murrell salutes back, and it's like, hey, we both respect that we both have these jobs and we both have this position and we had to do what we needed to do, but there's no ill will here. Like, we both played the game as best as we could, and this is how it's ended up.
I right before that sequence, like right as the submarine's coming up and like taking a look at the ship that's on fire now because they made it look like it's on fire, the Captain Murrell says, oh, I can't believe he's taking the bait. That's the first stupid thing he's done. And I love that line because it's the respect. It's the idea of like, this whole game has been perfect play on both sides. We just got like a little bit luckier here and a little bit more outwitting them than anything else. But it is respect. It absolutely is this idea of, no, he's just a guy doing his job, and I'm not going to fault that.
Yeah, and then once that's happened, and he's up top on the top of the sub with the first officer who's badly injured, Captain Murrell does not go with the others to the lifeboats. He stays behind and throws down a rope and basically says, hey, like, let's get a pulley system going and we can get your injured man off that boat. And so yeah, we get this like insane, like, you know, I guess if you know all your knot types and stuff, maybe this isn't that insane. But to me, I was like, whoa, I'm really impressed just how quickly they threw together this simple pulley system where he's pulling him up.
This wasn't even like, it's not like he called down and says like, hey, let's get your guy up there. All he does is throw a rope, and the other captain's like, I know exactly what we're doing here. Let me set up a double butterfly bow tie spaghetti knot. Here we go.
And then he climbs up the rope as well after the injured guy's pulled over. And we get our two captains face to face, and they treat it like a big moment where you sort of linger on them looking at each other for the first time properly. And the captain's like, hey, we have to get to the other side. Maybe we can get a lifeboat. Do you speak English? Which is a funny line because I'm like, technically he's been speaking English the whole movie, but yeah, all right.
I was kind of hoping that he would reply in German, and it's just kind of like revealed to the audience, no, we've been translating for you the whole time. Yeah. This has always been in German.
Yeah, that'd have been neat actually if they did that. But hey, I guess that's too forward thinking for 1957. Yeah.
Well, I literally hired a German actor. He could do it.
Oh, of course he could. I don't question that for a second, but and then just the sort of like the camaraderie and like just how great the American soldiers or the sailors are. I like, with no question, like like one of them just gives the order to bring a lifeboat back, even though it might get caught in this like you know bomb that the submarine's going to set off. It's like, no, we have to go back and get the captain. And I thought, oh, maybe there'll be some conflict where they get to the captain and they're like, oh, we're not taking them, like they're the enemy, and the captain would have to like give the order or talk them into it. But no, they immediately grab the injured guy and they're like helping him, and I'm like, this is like almost too perfectly happy and everyone's doing the right thing. Like it's almost just too like bow tied.
That's the way that, like, again, not talking about trench warfare or like the horrors of the front line or anything like that. Historically, that's the way wars have been fought, is the idea of the gentlemanly war, the idea of like, yes, we may have defeated you, but we don't have to treat you like savages, you know?
Yeah.
Like when it's two equals fronts, obviously if it's like, you know, colonizers versus Native Americans or whatever, it's all hell breaking loose. But ignoring that side of things, when it's two equal fronts, that's the way that it's supposed to be. And I appreciate it in this movie because it does feel like the capper to the mind games, and the respect that these two characters have is showing that, yeah, you get full pass. Like, yeah, we're taking you in as prisoners, obviously. Like, you're not just going back to Germany, but we're going to treat you with respect here.
But you're not in handcuffs. You're not been thrown in a jail cell.
Here's a cigarette. Here's some clean clothes. Like, whatever you need.
I guess it just extends from like that idea of like the crew doesn't like have as much conflict as with the captain as it felt like it was setting up. So this felt like another opportunity to have them maybe like resist what he wants to do, and you know, because this feels like respect between the two captains. Like it'd be okay if some of the crew were like, I don't want to help the leader of the submarine.
I mean, I think that it would be completely valid to have them fight back against the captain's thing if there was, I don't know, a single death at any point.
That's true. That is very true. I mean, literally, what have we lost so far? Some fingers.
Yeah, we lost our mattresses. Oh, God.
Well, it doesn't matter when the whole ship goes down later.
Well,
anyway.
Whatever. U.S. government's paying for that. We don't need that.
Yeah.
So I do want to bring this up as we approach the ending here, which is this movie was filmed. It's based off of a book. The original book had a different ending, and the director filmed the original book ending and then this ending. The original book ending was both the captains drown. They both die. I didn't get exact details as to, like, did he dive in to save the other captain? Did they just both go down with their ships? Don't know. But both captains died in the original ending. And then they also filmed this one. And they basically just left it up to preview audiences and said, do you want the tragic ending or the feel-good ending? And unanimously, everyone's like, feel good. Why would we want the tragic ending?
Yeah, I mean, the ending obviously is the two captains. They do a burial at sea for, I presume, the first officer from the submarine who's died with his injuries. And, you know, because you see the Stolberg saying some stuff in German before they, you know, slide him out of the water. And afterwards, the captain comes over, and like the final kind of words they kind of speak is Stolberg says, oh, like, you know, I should have died many times, but I somehow keep surviving. This time it was your fault, which is a very interesting phrasing. This time it was your fault. And he's like, well, you know, like, maybe next time I won't make that mistake. And Stolberg just says,
next time I won't throw you the rope.
Yeah. And it's like, somehow I don't think that's true, or to that effect. It's like,
Yeah.
like you will always throw the rope because you are honorable, and you will always do that, is the implication, and that's what the movie ends on. So yeah, it's a upbeat ending, surprisingly, all things considered, and maybe it's almost to a detriment to the movie that there isn't a little bit more death and a little bit more like darkness and stakes, and like maybe like, because I think this whole like respect at the end would actually be even more impactful if it was a little bit more heated beforehand. Like if it was like, oh, we have killed people on both sides, and like
I feel like the escalation was present, because that's the thing. If either side just came out and was like, okay, we're going to murder all your guys, that would be a problem because it would immediately demonize that side. But I think the escalation was already present, where if someone got caught up, like, again, the idea that a guy lost his fingers because of just too many orders being given too quickly, depth charges needed changing, and also we're dropping them at the same time. I think that that's a perfect place where you can have a death, and theoretically you can blame it on the fact that they were attacking the Germans, but it's your own fault. Like, you were the ones giving the orders in that situation. And that's the layer where we can begin from there and start building up of, okay, now all of a sudden there is a hull breach and 2 Germans die. Then on the other side, they sink a torpedo and a couple Americans die. And you just trade off a couple of lives until it feels like something has actually happened here.
Yeah, but it would make that mutual respect at the end just have more impact, because it's very easy to have the mutual respect when it feels like, I mean, people have died in the German side towards the end. You see like the bodies on the top of the submarine, but it's very easy to have mutual respect when like you've not really suffered any losses,
right?
Throughout the whole encounter.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
hey, but it's, I think obviously it does ramp up, and that final 20 minutes or so is probably some of the highlights of the movie. I think the introductions to the characters are good. Primarily though, I think it's the German side that's the more compelling, because it feels like they're actually wrestling with something, whether it be the fear of like not being able to get away from the American ship, or their own inner turmoil about the orders they're following and that kind of thing. Like, it's not the deepest take on some of those ideas, but it's definitely there, and it definitely enhances like their attitude and why the decisions they're making, or specifically Stolberg, like the decisions he's making, is all kind of colored by these other conversations he has and what he clearly has in his belief system. So there's some nuance there, and arguably if there was just some nuance, like maybe a character on the American side who was, because in the same way that we've got the Nazi on the German side who's like super devout, like someone who's a dick on the American side would have been nice to balance things out a little bit,
I mean, it depends on your definition of dick, because I feel like, you want somebody who is at odds with the captain, but I don't know if I want that to be something where he's distrusting the captain, or if he's like bloodlust, if he's like, no, let's kill some Nazis, let's like that. I'm picturing that scene that you were talking about of someone on the life rafts pushing back against the idea of saving the captain of the U-boat, and having that character present earlier on of being like, why are we wasting depth charges on scaring them? Why don't we just go for the kill? Like, that sort of thing could have provided a little bit of both against the captain and bloodlust. Yeah,
there's just these things that would have dialed it up, right, and in really positive ways across the board that I think would have like just made it something a bit more special to me. As it is, I think it's a pretty solid movie, but it does feel very of its time in its writing, and I think that that feels more dated to me than like how it looks visually, or the type of actors they have in it, or anything like that. It's how it actually writes its characters that feels dated to me. So
no, I agree with that wholesale. Like the dialogue, like you said, it's so fast paced, it's so quick that it doesn't really even matter what they say. You kind of just gather what they're doing by what needs to be happening. Yep.
We'll just we'll say a lot of sailing terms and a lot of ship terms, and just just trust them that they're making sense.
There's a sequence where I think it's after the bit where the submarine like goes underneath the destroyer, where the captain and his first mate go down to, I'm assuming, the navigator, and they just start throwing out numbers and like selling them like, now, okay, if we were going 240 knots at 140 and then this at negative 140, where would we be in 24 hours time? And the navigator could have said, we'd be in Bermuda. And I'd be like, yep, sure. I don't know. You could be anywhere. You could just throw out something and I'd say, yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah. Which is not to say that I have to understand everything they're saying, but it really did feel like there was no attempt to make some of this digestible to the audience.
And again, like, one of my favorite time travel movies is Primer, which also makes no attempt to make it digestible for the audience, but it's confident in what it's doing. And this one, it feels like it's confident in what it's doing, but what it's doing is not nearly as meaty as I would like it to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that's the Enemy Below. It's it's an interesting war movie. It's got its pluses, it's got its negatives, and it's worth a watch for sure if it sounds interesting to you. But it's not the best ever by any stretch.
Yeah, I would say for an hour and 40 minutes, maybe only 20 minutes of it feel like it's just too long. Not quite padding, but just like too long. But overall, it goes by pretty quick. So definitely worth a watch if you just want something light and breezy.
All right, David, what are you rating The Enemy Below out of 10?
I'm a little bit less, I think, when I started the review, but it's not by much. I was still feeling in the 7s. The question is 7.5. I think I'm gonna go flat 7. It's close to the 7, but I think I started at the 7.5, but I'm just gonna go flat 7 here. It's still good. It still is a very good movie. I know I particularly like it because of the mind game stuff, but yeah, the big thing is the pacing and like the mush that is a bunch of bombs being dropped is a problem. And then once you realize the Americans can't lose, all tension is gone. Like, even when they get hit by a torpedo and they're just like, whatever, brush it off. In fact, make it look worse. We want them to think that they hit us worse than they did. It's like, okay, so you guys are just immortal then. Got it.
Yeah, I'm not far off. I think actually 7 is what I was kind of leaning towards. It's got pros, it's got cons. Ultimately, it's still a very pleasant watch, and there's reasons to watch it. But it's not, I don't think it's a great movie though. So I think 7's where I'm landing on it, which is there's things to enjoy here. There's characters to get into, but it does have its faults. So 7 out of 10 for me. So
now the question: does it make the cut?
I think this is a very good example of cutting it close.
Yeah. I feel bad because I do like it, but
it's not like an outright recommendation of you must see this. That's not what this is. So I think it's cutting it close.
Yeah, I still would suggest people watch it even after they've watched this entire review, but it's flawed. It has flaws, and that is something that needs to be brought up.
I mean, yeah, if you like the sound of it, by all means, you know.
If you don't like the sound of it, Submarine season's going to be a long season for you.
But yeah, there you go. That's Enemy Below. Next time on Collector's Cut, we're doing another 50s movie before we jump ahead to the 80s to get into some of the heavy hitters. But we're looking at Run Silent, Run Deep next time on Collector's Cut. So look forward to that. But you can, of course, support Collector's Cut over on Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Get access to the Rate and Rundown segments we do for every episode. We also do a monthly bonus show called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. Recent examples include 2004's Catwoman, or Loquisha, or we actually did The Room earlier this year, finally, after. So there's like 45 or so episodes of that now, back catalogue, building up. You can get access to that. So if that sounds like fun and you want to hear us cry, laugh, scream, rage.
Yeah. A lot of the early ones were also like action-oriented movies. So if you're here for that, we did a bunch of those as well.
So yeah, by all means, go and check out that stuff. And thanks to everyone who already does. It really does help keep this show coming, as well as the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our sci-fi movie podcast. Go check out that. We just did a countdown episode, and we did the top sci-fi movies of the 2000s. But we do reviews every week, just like this show, but with sci-fi movies. But yeah, that is that. So. Thank you once again for joining us. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, comment, let us know what you thought of the movie, if you've seen it down below, all that usual stuff people say on YouTube and whatnot. But that is us. Thank you once again. We'll see you guys next time. Keep watching movies, and if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic community.